Oh, hold on one second, please. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So first, I just wanted to say thank you to Ed Market and Karen for helping to organize this webinar. I'm excited to present sensory information to you today and to have a dialogue about the needs and learning environments and the different diverse needs of different students, and especially related to the sensory integration system. So just a little bit of background about myself. As Karen said, I am the Chief Executive Officer of Viggi Corp. And I also like to think of myself as the blue sky explorer of the company. We all have our own titles, and that is very descriptive of my nature. I tend to live up in the clouds a little bit. I like to look to the future. I like to look at what's here and now today and what are the needs, and then how can we plan and invent and design for those needs, not only today, but to design for the changing needs as we continue forward. And I'm an inventor as well. I invented the patented and award-winning Widget 3-in-1 flexible seating system. I invented that as part of my MFA in industrial design from Rochester Institute of Technology, which I'll go into a little bit about as far as the background and what led me into focusing on seating system and movement in the classroom and the research that I found through my process. And that, which started back in 2008, I started the design program. Prior to getting my MFA in industrial design, I spent my career really in business and marketing and sales and training. And although I was successful, I guess, on the outside, I really was not fully satisfied with my career. And I stumbled on industrial design as an occupation. I read the job description and said, this is exactly how I think. I'm a design thinker. And I think in systems. I have these ideas that pop in my head, and I'm not quite sure what to do with them. So going back to RIT to get my grad degree was an amazing experience, which led to where we are today in forming Viggi Corp, which was formed as a corporation in 2015. I also have a bachelor's degree in business with a concentration in marketing and a double major in art and photography from SUNY Rockport here in New York. So I kind of live in that center brain world, or what I think of as the design thinking world. So today we're going to talk about why movement's important in a learning environment, and why it's important to have these flexible spaces where diverse learners are coming together to come together. So the focus of our company, Viggi Corp, we think of ourselves as inventors for learning and well-being. Our design process is at the very heart of that synergy between inclusive education and general wellness, where they come together, and that is our focus. So the products that we design in our company fall within, again, that intersection between those two. So as I'm going through my thesis research, and over the last 8-10 years, there's been this shift in inclusive education trends. And many of you that are on the line today probably are already aware of this, but we know that more and more inclusive education has been proven to be beneficial for not only the kids that have special needs, but the kids that don't have the special needs. By coming together, learning from each other is so important in the educational environment. There's been an increase in inclusive classrooms for many years due to federal regulations, and that presents this need for universal design in the classroom, tools that support this changing curriculum to meet these needs, and the shift to 21st century skills, which is that innovative thinking, that creativity, the collaborative thinking. And that's led to this trend towards these flexible classroom environments and seating options that inspire movement. And that word inspire is really important to me. It's always been part of my design process. It's not just about how do we make a seat that moves, but it's how do we inspire the body to move naturally, and how do we design for this inclusive environment. And as we move forward in education, we see this trend in special needs that again that kids and adults, they need that movement. Some people need it more, some students need it less. But their research from people far smarter than me have proven that there is a correlation between increased cognitive learning and development and the need for movement and helping to aid that process. There's an increased need for therapy tools targeted towards helping students to receive that sensory input. There's an increase in children with ADHD. Currently, there's 6.4 million kids across the United States, ages 4 to 17, that have ADHD. And there's an increase in children with autism, as we know, and I'm sure many of you know. 1 in 68 children ages 4 to 17 have autism, and this need for increased activity continues to change. And that creates changes with our curriculum, and it creates changes with how we teach. It creates changes with the objects within the classroom that to me become more of a learning aid versus furniture. We actually, in our company, try not to use that word furniture. We try to use the terms of object. We use the term of learning aid. It's a tool in the classroom. We want what I'm encouraging for the folks that are on the line and that are watching this webinar to think about not only how do we just design to allow movement, but how do we create a system in a classroom that inspires it. So we think of we hear this buzz term of the 21st century classroom. What is that? Everybody's talking about it. It's on all the marketing materials, along with flexible seating, because that is a definite buzzword, which is awesome. I'm very excited to see flexible seating being talked about out in the market. When I started working on the Widget, which was back in 2010, the only product in the market that was helping to provide movement in the classroom was the stability ball. And there's a lot that's changed since then, and there's more products in the market, and more teachers are talking about how can we be flexible, and what objects are out there to help the classroom to be flexible. And what does the 21st century classroom really mean? And for us, we think about learning environments that facilitate sensory organizing activities, resulting in improved educational outcomes. That's really what we focus on. And when we think about that 21st century, because when we organize these sensory activities and we integrate our sensory systems, we're able to be more available for learning. And that's what our goal is to impact the educational outcome. And versus just putting something on there that says flexible to sell a product. We really want to improve the educational outcome. So Dr. Jean Ayers is the kind of the founder, so to speak, of occupational therapy and this whole idea of how to activate learning and engagement and to look at the sensory systems when we're looking at classroom development and learning and what the students need. And there's a great quote that says, when the brain is not processing sensory input well, it usually is not directing behavior effectively either. So we're talking about behavior systems in the classroom when we talk about sensory input, and how do we help to regulate the senses of that individual to help them to be more available for learning. So there's this continuum, this sensory modulation continuum, and I in no way am an expert on sensory modulation continuum. An occupational therapist definitely is, and we engage occupational therapists on a daily basis. They're highly intelligent, creative folks that I think should be on every design team, especially for companies that are designing furniture for a classroom. And when we look at this sensory continuum or this integration, we look at the 5 basic senses that we're all familiar with: touch, sight, sound, smell, taste, but also there's movement and balance. There's postural muscle control, also known as vestibular and proprioceptive senses. And then there's this continuum where some kids are overly sensitive, some are less, some are sensory seeking, some are over responsive. They don't like the feeling of being touched. They don't like tags in the back of their shirts. And then some kids students crave that fast, constant movement, and also balance. And when we have kids, especially kids that have ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorder, many of them also have this different needs which fall on this continuum within the different senses. And I wanted to have this little boy, Neil, who is really awesome, kind of walk you through his definition of sensory input. Let me get to this.
Proprioceptive. You can think of proprioception as your body awareness. You get proprioceptive input every time you get input through your muscles and joints. It sends a message to your brain that says, this is where I am and this is what I'm doing. You get proprioceptive input to help you do everything your body wants to do. Like pushing yourself on a scooter board, carrying something heavy, or even getting dressed. By doing more with your body, you can get more proprioceptive input. This helps me feel better. When I feel like my body is out of control, I like to jump, scooter board, or getting wrapped up tight in a blanket. Proprioceptive input helps me to calm down and organize my body. Vestibular. Your vestibular sense is super complicated but super cool. We all have something in our inner ear that tells the brain whether we are balanced and whether we are moving. It tells our brain whether I am right side up, upside down, moving forward, or moving backward. It is what it tells us that we are dizzy and better stop spinning. If our brain is under responsive to vestibular input, then our body wants to constantly move and spin, and we never get dizzy. If your brain is too responsive to vestibular input, then you feel off balance. It makes it scary to do activities where you have to tilt your head back or your feet are not flat on the ground. Our vestibular sense is very important to help us do everything we need to throughout the day. To figure out what your needs are helps to go and work with an occupational therapist. I have two of those, one here and one at school. I go to OT 1 time a week. Katie and me and my mom gets to do fun things together when we go. When I leave, my body feels better. It feels like I am in control. We work out our muscles and our brains. Katie and my mom like to talk about things for us to try at home and school. If you have a hard time with your sensory input, there are a lot of things you can do to make it better. There are activities to help your brain learn how to respond differently to sensory input. You can help your body feel calm and in control by getting the sensory input you need throughout the day. Your parents, teachers, and occupational therapists can help. To learn more about
I just saw one of the responses, the Q&A asked me to speak louder, so I do apologize. I will do my best here. So Neil was able to show you a little bit about what that means and how that feels for a student that has the need for more balance, or that needs to feel grounded in space, that needs to have, for example, their feet flat on the floor because they have to be able to feel that to be able to feel grounded. So there's many different senses that are going on within the learning environment. And something else that I wanted to note as well, and this is what I challenge, all of our field of design and especially with furniture, is how can we design that type of need for that need, but in the classroom environment? most schools have occupational therapy rooms, which is amazing and it's great. And we have sensory rooms getting started all over the country. And many companies are selling all different really great tools for those sensory rooms. But what else can we do with the objects in the classroom to be able to provide that sensory need when the student needs it? Because when we look at this hierarchy of sensory functions by Dr. Ayers, you know, she talks about it, it kind of reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that in order for learning to happen and improve the language and motor development and cognition, you know, all of our senses at the very bottom of this period need to be integrating. So they've got to be functioning and working together. And with a student that has sensory processing disorder, they're not functioning, they're not coming together. And that's kind of, it's like when you think about traffic patterns, you know, when you have a traffic streets that are flowing smoothly, that's kind of someone that has the sensory integration happening up in their brain and it's well formed. But when somebody does not, it's like this big traffic jam that's constantly happening. And that what ends up happening in the classroom is that it presents itself by behavioral problems. It presents itself through learning challenges or what may appear to be a learning disability, but really it's not. It's a sensory need. So identifying areas that we as designers can improve the classroom environment to provide that while the student is actually learning, not just when they're taken out of the classroom and brought over to an occupational therapy room to receive that input that they need. So the sensory modulation continuum, as we talked about, has many different, you know, you're high, you're low, you can be sensory seeking, poor registration, meaning that you respond more slowly versus, you know, very active. And we think about this universal design need, or, you know, we think about it being that balance or that way that we can balance self-regulation and helping the student to become more self-regulated, where they can receive the input they need in a way that that they can do that by themselves. And what that does is it helps to teach better self-control so that they can improve the way that they handle their emotions and their behavior, and that they can function in a way that, again, helps them to be more available for learning. And so self-regulation is that ability to process all of these 7 senses that we have in a way that helps us to manage our emotions and behavior within the demands of our situation or within those demands of the classroom environment. So when we think about movement, those tend to be our sensory seekers who really need to move. You know, that physical movement activates the learning. There's many products out in the market today, including ours, that promote that improved focus and concentration and helps to improve behavioral outcomes. But really, how does it do that? And how can we continue to design for that type of need and environment as we move forward? And how can we because we know and it's proven that it helps to maintain focus and concentration. It integrates learning from both of our brain's hemispheres by being able to, you know, move the body naturally, whether it be just, you know, a rocking, fidgeting motion, back to front, forward a little bit, swiveling, but saying to the student, it's okay, you can move your body the way that you need to move your body. And it helps to reduce that chance of being overwhelmed because we're not kind of overloading our senses. And I want to talk a little bit about my thesis, which was focused on universal design in the classroom. And it really was about finding this balance. And this was my thesis before I even designed the Widget 3-in-1 flexible seating system, before I even had the form. What I wanted to try to accomplish is to find that balance between that need for control in the classroom, but yet we have this natural need. In the classroom, we have this need to have safety and stability and order and rules, and that's our traditional classroom where we were designing these industrial revolution little people that would come out and work in factories. But we know that that has changed and shifted, and that's what we think of in the 21st century, that we're designing innovative thinkers who can collaborate, who can handle their emotions, who have a high level of emotional intelligence. But how do we do that? And part of that is providing this natural environment that allows freedom and movement and change and unpredictable. But it's how do we find that balance? Because we still need some control in the classroom, and we have to, we also, I believe, have to be very sensitive to different teaching styles as well. So not only are we working with different student and learning styles, but we have different teaching styles. So how do we find that balance? And also taking a child-centered approach with universal design, including all stakeholders. And I encourage all designers and furniture makers and folks, curriculum designers, to think about how do we involve all stakeholders. And I'll just give you an example. I was at a school system yesterday meeting with the assistant superintendent, and he brought in the facilities person. And it was so exciting to see this whole wall of different poster boards that teachers had put together of all different 21st century classrooms. What do they look like? And they were really fun. They had all these little pictures and cutouts from different magazines, and they had some product on the floor to represent what was on there on the boards, and it looked great and aesthetically looked beautiful. And then I asked them if they had involved occupational therapists in this process or special education, and they had not. So I strongly encourage that they do, but also I went in to explain why it's important to include special education and occupational therapy, because they are getting at the root needs of what our children need, what the students need in the classroom, regardless of their age. They're trained and they're naturally gifted in understanding what the deep needs are, and then being able to communicate those needs to the teacher. They're able to find resources to try to solve for that need, to help improve learning. That's what they're there for. And I believe, and I think it's so important, we have occupational therapists help us every day in our company to help us to design for that universal classroom. And universal means that we're designing for the extremes. We're designing for that continuum. So that if we're designing for the extremes, then we will, in effect, be able to benefit all students, so that we're not stigmatizing kids that have special needs, but we're designing for the entire classroom, this sensory integrated classroom is the way that I think about it. So a little bit about what inspired the Widget, and this was long ago, before the forum again was created. I wanted to design what I call the classroom habitat, which was bringing life and non-life or objects together in the system to inspire this natural system of movement. I wanted to design a modular system that inspired that movement, to provide children with an object. And my thesis advisor was very, very smart. He said to me, Sandra, do not call that a chair, because if you say you're designing a chair, it's going to look like a chair. It's going to have 4 legs and a back. And I just want to say that that's what I see in the market right now with, let's say, the stools. There's lots of stools in the market. In fact, I'm shocked with how many different stools there are in the market. I love the design intent and the fact that there's more product coming out in the market that helps movement. But it's not just about, I'm going to design a stool that moves. It's about helping to inspire the movement, providing children with a way to feel safe, to be free and explore. I wanted to reduce that feeling of confinement, to inspire children and teachers to build their own environment, because that's what we're saying we need. Collaborative spaces means that we need to reinvent how we think about that space. And individual and group changing needs. So it's not just about designing when I go in, what I find fascinating, maybe because I'm newer in the educational market, is that a lot of the classrooms have this durable, long-lasting furniture that's made of steel and will last forever. And that's part of the problem. It's going to last forever, and that's great in one way, but in another way, if it's not changing with the changing needs of the curriculum and the changing needs of education, then it becomes an obstacle in the classroom. And I also want it to be simple, inviting, and intuitive. So some of my inspiration was the rocking chair or the rocking horse on the top. I actually still get on that with my kids today in the park, you know, that playful movement, but yet it's safe. You can get that movement and that defying gravity, but in a safe way. The Weeble that wobbles but doesn't fall over. So, you know, you get this movement, and I'm sitting on a Vigget right now, you get this movement, but you kind of feel that, oh, it's not quite going to go all the way over. So you get this resistance. So that was part of my inspiration. The Little Tykes furniture, I have to say, I love the organic feel of it, and I wanted to bring that feeling of nature into the classroom, you know, that we feel that feeling of not being confined, and that, you know, there's something just really elegant and calming about, you know, having that organic feel, those big radiuses, rounded edges, and that one-piece construction, so that it helps with durability, it helps with cleaning, and so I was very drawn to that. And then the Legos, just that fun, interlocking, building, transforming, versatile. So I'm going to play just a short video that I took with a very old camera. So sorry for how it's pixelated, but so this was back in 2010, and this was when I first started observing classrooms that were using the stability ball, and I call this happy feet. And what I was doing was observing how people in general just want to naturally move their body. And this classroom is using the ball. Now you can see that this child is just trying to get some kind of proprioceptive input. They need to be moving their body, and they're trying to get that. Now this boy is on a ball that is not inflated properly. It's too small for him. He's trying desperately to sit on it, and ergonomically it's just not providing, you know, the benefit of what the ball actually does. And the ball does provide many great benefits, but we know through research that the balls are just not safe. Kids fall back and crack their head open, and it's a ball. What do kids want to do with a ball, especially sensory seeking kids? So I just wanted to play just a short video about the Vigget. Many of you may have already seen this video, but it does give you a general overview about the product.
Celebrate flexible spaces with the Vigget 3-in-1 flexible seating system. This patented modular seating system facilitates and inspires active learning and collaboration to improve attention, focus, and concentration. Use the Vigget as an active seat to release energy by rocking side to side or front to back. The ergonomic design improves balance, posture, and core muscle development. The Vigget's no-tip design allows for greater self-regulation and helps the teacher to focus on teaching instead of worrying about whether students will fall backwards in their seat. Turn the Vigget and use it as a supported stool that hugs the body for added sensory input. Turn it again to use as a flat desk surface. Pair Vigets to create individual and group spaces. In addition to the benefits of movement and flexibility, fidgety fingers naturally find the sensory bumps inside the Vigget side handles. Vigets come in 5 standard sizes, toddler through teen and teacher. Dimensions are almost identical with traditional chairs, making it a great addition to use with existing desks and tables. Made with sustainable plastic, it is naturally antimicrobial, long-lasting, and easy to clean. The Vigget is lightweight, easy to move, stackable, and durable. The Vigget 3-in-1 flexible seating system can help transform any space: education, libraries, therapy clinics, healthcare spaces, home, or office.
So the Vigget is what came out of my thesis. As you can see, I started with very small clay models, and we have product in the market. When we first went to market, we had 2 sizes, and we worked very closely with special education teachers, occupational therapists, and we got a lot of feedback, ergonomic feedback. We watched kids in the Widget to see how they were engaging, and we got the feedback as far as learning and educational outcomes, how it was benefiting, how it wasn't benefiting. We slowed the rocking down a little bit. We added a 1/2 inch here. We cut in a 1/2 inch there. In the stool portion, when you turn it, so it's 3-in-1, the active seat, the stool, and the desk surface. And when you turn it, you can use it as the supported stool. And what it does, why we say supported, is it provides, again, for kids that have that higher sensory need of feeling grounded in space, or kids that have difficulty with knowing where they are in space, and boundaries. It helps to provide those boundaries, and it compresses around the body. Many students that have autism, they like to use weighted blankets and vests that are weighted to help them to feel that compression, and the stool has been shown to be able to provide that as well. And then being able to turn it into the desk portion, and that's what makes it flexible. So we hear this term flexible seating out in the market, and it's really kind of how I look at it, as flexible seating is just anything that's not a chair, or at least that's what we see in the market right now. But what we want our primary focus with the Widget is to provide that active seat or that movement. The stool and the desk surface are additional benefits, but the main goal of the Widget is to provide the movement, but not only the movement, but help to move and transform space. And you're getting that proprioceptive input that you may need through those large muscles. So as the body is moving, we're getting in, and that's whether it's a stool or any type of product that's on the market that helps to move. It's getting that the large motor system moving, and it really helps with that development, especially kids that have low tone and the need for that additional core development. It's really benefiting all those systems that are working together. But how do you do that that's balanced so that they're able to self-regulate? And the Widget is safe. You can't tip backwards. We call it a no-tip design. And that's what I encourage for designers when they're looking at designing new, whether it be seating or other objects in the classroom, to think about how can we build in a safety feature so that students are not able to tip backwards. And whether it's a stool or a ball or other products that are out in the market right now, it's very easy to tip backwards. And that becomes a challenge when we talk about allowing for self-regulation. We want students to be able to get the input they need when they need it, and so that the teacher can focus on teaching and not having to redirect the student or come over and worry about whether or not the student is going to be falling off this device that's been provided that student to try to improve learning outcomes. So when we look at this pyramid again, when we go back to it, the Widget is just one design. There's many other, like I said, but it's just one design that helps to address those lower levels of the sensory pyramid to help make learning possible. So as we address those needs, the student is able to move up into better language. It's been proven to help with speech. It's been proven to help with, we just got a wonderful quote from an early intervention specialist in Ohio working with early intervention child who was biting and just having a really hard time. They gave him the Widget. They were able to, the child was able to sit down, immediately went to the sensory bumps in the handle, started moving, and has been able to regulate their emotions and behavior in a way that they're more available for therapy, which was an amazing testament to the product, really wonderful. And the sensory bumps in the side handles, we actually got that idea from special ed teachers and occupational therapists who put Velcro underneath tables and chairs for students who need that tactile input. And that's very beneficial for them. It helps with calmness. And so I just encourage to solicit that feedback from what are teachers and therapists doing now to help this student, and then how can we again bring that into our designs. So the Widget's role is also to assist in that that just right moment, or that self-regulated moment, so the student's not either withdrawn or fight or flight. Again, it's in that continuum. We want to try to design for the middle, for the balance of that. And then this is just a slide. I'm not going to go over totally a lot of this I've already talked about, but it helps to show some of the main benefits of how it's providing that sensory input that's needed in the learning environment. And then, you know, how it works together as a system. So we really think we're systems thinkers. So how do you use the objects in your classroom to help to promote a system that allows students to be flexible when they need to be flexible, or the teacher, and that it flexes with the changing needs of the classroom and the changing needs of the curriculum. Some of our testimonials are here too. We've had, you know, really great feedback. As I said, we went out with the 2 sizes back in 2016. We got feedback, and then we changed the design, and that's when we went and we made the 5 sizes, and we've sold over 5,000 out in the market. And we continue to learn new ways in which to use the Widget in the classroom that I never, you know, knew about. When I designed the Widget, honestly, sensory integration was not being talked about 8 years ago. It's just been I would say within the last, you know, 4 or 5 years that more and more people are talking about sensory needs, and it's wonderful. And the more services that are available, and as occupational therapists continue to become more engaged in the process, we hear more and more about how it benefits all students. So I'd like to open it up for questions. I see that we have a couple. Let me go to our Q&A. It says from Hartford, you've talked a lot about the role of occupational therapists, but can you discuss the role of learning engineer as well? I'm not sure what exactly is being, like what the meaning of the learning engineer role, if you mean curriculum developer or someone that's engineering that learning environment. I believe that, again, that therapists and designers, that it's a collective team, that involving those stakeholders is really very important to come together. And I think that the meeting yesterday was a great example that I talked about, because when the administrator did not even ever think about including the special education team or the occupational therapy team. And the team that he had engaged was the architect and design team, which is great. I know they need to be involved. But what I heard, and what I hear a lot when I'm out at conferences and talking with schools, is that it tends to be more about aesthetics versus the actual critical need, you know, human need of that student. And again, it's finding that balance, because aesthetics is very important, but yet how do you, you know, find that need, or how do you find that, how do you design for the balance of those needs? Because if it's just aesthetics, then we're losing out on it actually, you know, improving the educational outcome. And it kind of reminds me of the, you know, the greenwashing of, you know, this is organic, so it's good for you, or this is green, so we should buy it. It's similar to flexible seating right now, almost, that it's this generic term that's being used in ways that, yes, it helps to make the classroom more flexible, but is putting a student on the floor really beneficial for their oxygen levels, when it's been proven, again, people far smarter than me, that when we're not up and active and moving our bodies, and we're sitting on the floor, for example, that there's this loss of oxygen flow, and we're not ergonomically positioned correctly. And I saw I've been in many classrooms where students are sitting on floors that now they're in their personal space, And for kids that again have that need where they need to know where they are in space and they have struggles with boundaries, doing that is just going to lead to behavioral problems. That's when students are going to act out. That's when they're going to become disruptive. And the Widget, for example, in a kindergarten class, we converted to all Widgets in the class. There were 16 Widgets, 16 classmates in the class, and we had independent researchers go in and they saw a 90% reduction in observable disruptive behavior. And one student who was the most disruptive in the class went from writing only 1 to 2 sentences to 5 to 6 sentence paragraphs after Widgets. And that's been attested by the teacher, who said that she actually sits down on her own accord and the room is quieter, the kids are less disruptive. And we believe within 5 years, 5 to 10 years, that every classroom across the U.S., across the globe, will have products like the Widget, something like it. Obviously, we would love it to be ours, but that doesn't make sense because the Widget doesn't work for every student. So it's so important to have different options depending on the need of the student, so critical, but we know that that's where the classrooms are moving towards, and which is very exciting. But I wanted to open it up. So yes, to answer the question, learning engineers, I believe such an important role in this process, and that collectively, we all come together to design. And I wanted to open it up for any other questions. I'm just looking at the, and I do apologize. I see more that it says speak louder, and I tried to speak as loud as I could.
Sandra, I think it was more technical on the systems and not so much on your end. So just wanted to address that and apologize for everybody if it was a little difficult to hear Sandra's presentation, but I believe we were able to rectify that midstream, and to remind everyone that you will get access to the recording. Okay.
There's another question. It is, are there any empirical studies on using the Widget in classrooms or plans to conduct studies? We do have a study. We have it available. It's on our website. And that was a study that was conducted by independent research firm. We are looking at additional studies. We recently had a study done at our BOCES, actually here locally. And it's at a school where it was teenagers using the teen adult size Widget. And they had an occupational therapist, behavioral specialist who went in, did a pre and a post, and they saw greater, I think it was about 56% improvement in the number of times the teacher had to redirect students. And it's quite amazing to see students using the Widget, and they immediately sit down and they put their hands in the side handles and they find those bumps. It's just it's so important that as designers, we think about ways in which we can incorporate that tactile feedback for students when they need it, and that it's in a way that's discreet enough that it's there when they need it, but if they don't need it, they don't have to use it, and that helps to make it beneficial for all students. So yes, we do have more studies to follow, and we're always open to interested partners to help us with studies. We would love that. We're always open to that. Other questions? You're welcome, Bonnie. Glad you found it. So I just wanted to add, for those of you that are still on the line, as we're waiting to see if there's any more questions, that I really do appreciate this opportunity. When I started grad school for industrial design, I never knew it was going to lead to this, which is pretty exciting. But as a company, we want to continue designing objects in the classroom that provide that sensory integration and those needs, and love to work with educational partners and helping to do that, and to connect with other furniture companies and designers to help in that process of what I think of as thoughtful design. Thoughtful design to me is where, you know, we're gathering that empathetic research, and we are taking more of an ethnography approach. So when I go in to observe a classroom, I sit like a fly on the wall, and I look at how they hold it, how they touch, how they're behaving, how they're interacting, and doing the before and after is so critically important, and really listening to the teacher and what their needs are. And another thing too, I know there's some folks from different universities on the line. I'm not sure if they're in occupational therapy or what type of organization, but I think it would be awesome, and I continue to promote this, and I did yesterday as well at that school, to have occupational therapists in the classroom to pull out, which a lot of districts are pull out. They call them pull out, meaning they take the kids and they bring them into a room, in this therapy room, and that's great. They have wonderful things in there, and the therapists are doing a great job. But then they have to go back into this classroom that doesn't have the not meeting the needs, and how frustrating that probably is for that student. So how can we bring in more people? And the reason why I'm talking about occupational therapists so much is that's what they're trained to do, is they're trained to understand what those deep needs are. So how can we bring more of that into the educational environment, so that I think every child, quite honestly, should be assessed individually for, you know, sensory needs, whether they have an IEP or don't have an IEP, and plans made accordingly. Because if it's just for students that have an IEP, you know, all students have, you know, a sensory need, but, you know, where they fall in the continuum again is different. So another question is, what type of feedback have you received in regards to back support, mostly with older kids? And we kept the back low purposely, because similar to the ball, so we wanted to still be able to provide this movement, this fidgeting movement, where your legs are at either side of the seat, but yet, and I'll just kind of turn this screen down, where you're getting this movement and that fidgeting motion, and you're helping to, you know, improve your core muscle development, but, you know, it kind of cups around the butt, as you can see. So it is providing ergonomic benefit, and it's helping to remind the spine, and it's helping to activate that vestibular system, which is focused on posture and balance. And so it's helping that. And that's why the ball is so helpful, because it helps not only with the bouncing, because some kids do need that bounce, but it also, because it doesn't have the back, it helps to promote that better posture. So it helps to remind the spine to sit up. So, and it also reduces that, oh, I'm gonna, you know, do this in the chair. It really activates the body. So especially for older kids too, we haven't had any negative feedback, but that's the reason that the back was designed low, was to still provide that benefit of the improved posture and balance. It also makes it really nice for pushing underneath the desk and tables, because it covers totally underneath the desk.
Sandra, can you just tell us quickly or briefly the overall process that it took you to actually have this product, excuse me, ready for use with the research and everything?
That's a great question. So I'll just give you a brief summary, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I started developing it in 2010 is when the form really started to take shape. And then I went to full-size prototypes. I carved the bottom, which we have in the office here, which over there, those are my first prototypes, to really work out the movement, that fidgeting motion. And I went from those prototypes, I hired an actual model maker who made foam prototypes. We did a lot of ergonomic studies. This is back in 2013-ish, 2012, 2013. And then we decided to make 2 of the small size, which is the 3 to 6-year-old size, the pre-K. I mean, the Viggi does have the fun factor. So we wanted to work through, again, more ergonomics, and we made some dimensional changes, and we had 2 new models made. And that's when we got really serious about it, and we started making videos and making it look real. We put it in classrooms, we had teachers try it, but they were foam prototypes, it wasn't real. And then I was fortunate enough, I was teaching at RIT at the time, finished my grad study program. I was teaching design thinking and industrial design. And I met our first investor back in November of 2014. And I always knew I'd have to meet somebody who was, that could become emotionally connected with what we were trying to do. And he's a very smart man, Dick Kaplan. He is CEO. What he does is start companies and turn them around. He also would share with you today, he's very open about it, that he has ADD. He remembers teachers telling him as a kid, Dickie, sit on your hands, stop moving, and how frustrated he was. He has a learning disability. His daughter's a special education teacher, like the stars aligned. And what he does is start companies. So he's very connected here. He helped us with our first investment, helped us to get our first molds. That was back in 2015. Helped us to incorporate as a company. We are a WBE certified company. He helped through that process. And to get additional funding, RIT ended up coming on as an investor, and they're on our board. So we've just been so fortunate and so blessed through this process. So in 2015, we purchased our first mold, and we went to market with it right away. And then kind of what I was sharing earlier, we spent that next year having Vigits out in classrooms and getting feedback. And then in January of 2017, we went to market with all 5 sizes. The Vigit is made in the United States. It's made out in Ohio, and that's where we ship. Vigits can be purchased through many different ways. Distributors on our websites. We're wanting to work more with dealers and architects and designers and trying to understand that market. I'm not coming from a furniture market background, so a lot of this is new for me. In some ways, I think that's good. In some ways, it can be challenging, but we want to work more on new buildings and especially if it's a special education or autism or ADHD focus, but definitely the inclusive environment. So since January of 2017, we've been selling from the 2-year-old size up to the adult size, and preschool, early intervention, all the way up to college. But our main, our highest sellers and our most focus really has been the pre-K through elementary. So that's a brief summary. We also have another amazing product, which I won't go into, but you can see it on our website, called the Digit Widget. Karen, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes. Just to remind everybody that please, if you think of a question, just simply type it into the Q&A section so that Sandra could address it. And also, if you think of a question even after today's presentation, you do have Sandra's information that you could contact us directly here at EdMarket, or also through the company Viggi Corp as well. So
Ed Spaces, we're at Ed Spaces this year, so if you're there, please stop by.
That's great. Okay. Well, I think that will wrap it up here, Sandra, with your presentation. Thank you so much for a content-rich, very informative presentation. For those that have joined us today, on behalf of EdMarket, I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Bye.